And ENTJs are not effing gonna understand. ENTJs are not gonna understand the language of an ENTP, an INFP, most likely. An INFJ. I don't even know who understands an ENTJ or who they understand. I have no idea. I feel like an ENTJ is almost a censor because they're so, like, outside of the other intuitives, you know? Like, it's, like, crazy. Like, I guess if, like, the intuitives are on this side and the, like, non-intuitives are across the chasm, then the ENTJs are, like, up on they're like, Simba. You know, they're like fucking Mufasa up here on this rock just looking over everyone else. Do not give a shit what the giraffes think. You know, on their side of the chasm even. They don't care about the monkey. They don't care about anything. There's the ENTJs up on the rock. They're presiding, and they do not give a shit about what you think. When they find out that you might be as smart as they are, they're shocked. And then they might invite you up onto their rock so that you may stand next to them while they preside, and then you can look cool. I like them, but there's something about ENTPs and ENTJs, man. I don't even know what it is. It's like... I should actually add a caveat. I actually do know an ENTJ, and he's probably the one that I've known the longest. He's probably one of the most solid dudes I know. I am not saying this about all ENTJs. Usually when I go off on like these tangents or I start to just blanket statement if in a negative way, I'm thinking of a couple of very specific people and situations. I'm not thinking, oh, everybody's like this. You know, when I went off on like the INTP ghost feeler, it's just I was thinking of certain people that I know that were in a certain place at the time. I'm not saying all of them, but the similarities are what I was connecting. So generally, if I'm saying something negative, it's because it's that personality in a negative place, in an either an unhealthy place, or maybe they're just not a good person, you know, and we all have at our worst. I would even say that it makes sense for me to have had negative experiences with at least some negative experiences with ENTJs, due to my not feeling that I probably belong in corporate America, because ENTJs are the executive, right? Naturally they should be in corporate America, but I didn't meet that many ENTJs in corporate America. The one I met I didn't really have a problem with. It's just that an ENTP went and made a bunch of problems. The only other ENTP I know for sure that I've ever met went and made a bunch of problems, and so that then the ENTP had to try to do like crazy damage control, which is almost impossible when an ENTP feels like creating a shitstorm. An ENTP is going to create a shitstorm, and it is going to be ugly. And that's an evil ENTP. That is the evil ENTP Antichrist. When I was talking about INTPs, I made a video about what an evil INTP would be, or the Emperor. I think I read that somewhere. That seems pretty right to me. So if an Emperor is an evil INTP, the Emperor from Star Wars, I think that an evil ENTP could possibly be, depending on how self-aware they are, they could possibly be the Antichrist. No, I don't know. I think actually possibly an evil ENTJ would actually make a better Antichrist, because I don't think that the ENTP is smooth enough to do. I don't think that they can speak, use TE, and sensing enough as far as like amassing followers and getting people to do, like, follow their vision. An ENTP might, like a bad ENTP might try to take over the world, but they wouldn't succeed. They would either need an ENTJ to help them do it, or they would need an INTJ to help them do it, or just to be an ENTJ, I think. Because the evil ENTP is just all over the place anyway. Just like a non-evil one is. Back to the ENTJs, though. I actually have had my most of my experience with ENTJs outside of corporate America. Yeah, I've tried really, really hard to be on the same page as ENTJs. And I think they have some fantastic qualities. I mean, they are dynamos. ENTJs are dynamos. I read the funniest thing about an ENTJ. It was on a blog. It was on one of the blogs, and this girl was talking about being an ENTJ, and it's interesting because for ENTPs, they talk about what your natural state is, either to be at rest or doing something. And while ENTPs are all over the place and crazy all the time, we'd rather just be at rest. You know, we want to get back to that place where we can sit around with our ideas or researching or like whatever it is that we're doing. So when we do, we try to be as efficient about it as possible, like get as much done in a burst of, you know, we work in bursts more often and we can get a crazy amount done in a little amount of time, but we prefer to work in bursts. An ENTJ, they like to be working on, they just want to be working all the time. They want to be moving, they want to be working, they want to be experiencing. They don't like stopping. When they stop, they don't know what the F to do with themselves. They can't relax very well, like they have to teach themselves to relax. And even then they might not be having fun, or because fun to them is to be working and doing and accomplishing, where fun to an ENTP is to be doing something that's not usually directly related to work. You know, they love to do and accomplish and everything, but if it's directly related to work, unless their work is super fun to them, they would rather not be doing it. They want to just be like in non-time. An ENTP would prefer to stay in non-time where nothing that matters. You know, there's no deadlines, nobody's expecting anything of them. They can just do whatever the heck they want, whether that's sitting around like, you know, reading or like crazy internet tabbing, or just working on really fun projects that have nothing to do with what they should be doing. That's what an ENTP wants to do. The ENTJ wants to be doing the projects. They want to start the projects, they want to get other people to do the project, they want to do it themselves, and then they stop and take a break like 3 days later when they haven't slept or eaten. And then they're unhappy because they have to sleep, you know, and rest. And ENTP, I don't like sleeping either. Once I'm asleep, I want to stay there, you know, like once I go to sleep, then I'm like, oh, this is my new rest state. Now I don't really want to get up. But going to bed in the first place is awful because then I have to make my brain turn off. And I don't want my brain to turn off. I like it when my brain goes, but it gets to the point it's so tired that you start your bleh. So anyway, this funny quote that I read, I feel like I'm a shark. I have to keep moving or die. That's freaking genius. Oh my gosh, because this ENTJ that like I knew quite well at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly like him. But there is something about an ENTJ and an ENTP you can't communicate that well. However, INTP and ENTJ, I believe, do a good job of communicating. I think that's their natural matches. So obviously, there are people out there that speak the ENTJ's language and vice versa. It's just not an ENTP. They're just gonna laugh and be like at least somewhat entertained by the ENTP. And the ENTJ is probably gonna think that the ENTP is a little bit of an alien too. And that's gonna go both ways. The ENTJ and ENTP are both gonna think each other is from like one of the outer rings of Saturn or something like that. If you're an ENTP, have you ever had a text conversation with an ENTJ? Good Lord. That is the fastest way to get in blow up fights, to misunderstand each other completely, because even in person ENTJ and ENTP don't understand each other completely, and then when it's over text oh my gosh. And even when you think you're understanding each other, or at least not exploding at each other, really you're kind of still on different pages. And if you go back and read the things that you've talked about, it's so funny because you misinterpret what they say as an ENTP. They misinterpret what you say really fast too. If you're an ENTP trying to type something to an ENTJ, my customary way to type is the same way I talk. You know, so I'll send multiple text bubbles because I want to send it as soon as the thought is out, so I send. But then an ENTJ and an INFJ and an INTJ, maybe that's a J thing. Their way to text is to put their thought in one bubble and send it back. So if they are sitting there waiting for your thought bubbles to come and you send one and you know you're going to send another one, they will take the first one and explode at it. They're not going to wait either for the rest of your message. They're not going to realize that you text in bubbles. So if you want to communicate successfully with an ENTJ, you're probably going to have to taper your way of communicating. You're going to have to be the one to change because they're not ever going to remember, oh, she sends a couple texts at a time. I should probably wait till the next one. They're going to see whatever you said first and they're going to instantly react. ENTJs and ENTPs are just like a constant, it's just like a freaking circus of misunderstandings is what it is a lot of the time, you know. And also there's like there can be a mutual awe. ENTPs do respect ENTJ's intelligence, hugely, greatly. Admire and respect ENTJ's intelligence and their ability to get things done that we could never we don't even want to get them done, but if we did, then we're like, whoa, dude, I don't know how you be doing that. And if the ENTJ stops long enough to realize that the ENTP actually has something to contribute, then they will, I believe, also have the mutual kind of awe going on. So it's like a mutual awe alien effect riddled with miscommunication, unless you can figure out how to, you know, to work that out. And it is, I think it is workoutable. But, you know, this is definitely going to be one of the more challenging, either romantic pairing, working together, because they're both going to be opinionated. They're both going to want to do things their way. If it's the ENTP's idea anyway, they're going to want to do it their way. If it's the ENTJ's idea, then the ENTP is just going to try to come up with a better, more awesome ways to do it. And the ENTJ is going to completely reject them. They're not going to want to hear it. Even if it is better, it doesn't matter. ENTJ does not want to hear that shit. Shut up and just help me with my project. You don't want me to mess with yours. That's about, that's my thoughts on ENTJs. I guess I'm just going to make a bunch of odd videos tonight.